Well, hello there, YouTube. It's Ro here. Thank you for visiting You Grow Ro. If this is your first time here, I hope you'll consider subscribing at the end of this video. If you've been here before, thank you so much for coming back. I appreciate you. Today, I'm going to walk you guys through a process that I go through, I don't know, every other day probably in my life, but this time specifically pertaining to gardening. And we'll do that in just a second. So you guys, spring is fast approaching for us gardeners. Quicker for some than others, depending on where you are, and you might be feeling exhausted or overwhelmed or just don't know where to start. Well, today I'm going to take you through a guided brain dump. This is something I do multiple times a week. I don't know. I do it often. I might even do it a few times in a day because I'm one of these people whose mind never stops working, and I will use this interactive process for every areas of my life, whether we're talking about the garden or career, relationships, finance, family, vacations, businesses, charity, meal planning, whatever you have, you can use a brain dump to help you organize those thoughts. All right, friends, so today what I'm bringing to you is a guided brain dump. Now, if you don't know what a brain dump is, it's really easy to complete, right? I've been doing brain dumps for years now, and I love them, especially for somebody like me who always has 200 things running through her mind at any given time. A brain dump is a great help for that type of personality, and in the situation where you're trying to organize your thoughts and get things down and make sure you don't forget something. So what is a brain dump? Well, a brain dump is when you take everything that's on your mind about a specific topic and you put it down in writing or on some sort of electronic device without worrying about organizing, like structure or perfection. It's a way to clear mental clutter, organize your thoughts, and capture like whatever ideas you have before they slip away. Think of it as like downloading your thoughts onto paper or a device, like an iPad or something, computer, so that you can process those thoughts at a later date, those thoughts, those ideas, etc., at a later date. For home gardeners, a brain dump before the spring season could include ideas, challenges, goals, to-do lists, plant selections, past experiences, and anything else that comes to mind about gardening. So what I'm going to ask you to do in order to complete this brain dump is to go ahead and grab yourself a pen, pencil, something to write with, and a piece of paper, or if you prefer, pull your phone out to like a note app or a laptop where you can take notes or whatever, because that's the whole point of this. This is that's what you need here. So go grab yourself something to take some notes with, and then meet me back right here. So now this brain dump can take 5 minutes, half an hour, as long as you want it to. What I'm going to do is, how it's going to work is I'm going to read you a bunch of prompts, and then you are going to just take down whatever comes to mind. You're not thinking it all the way through. You're not trying to form complete sentences. You're just getting it down, just whatever comes to mind, right? Okay, so first, I'd like you to think, and I got a whole bunch of prompts here. So do feel free to pause the video at any point if you feel like you have to expound on something for the time being before you can move on to the next prompt. All right? Okay, so first I'd like you to think about planning and preparation. What are your main goals for this year? What worked well in your garden last year? What challenges did you face and how did you overcome them? What new plants or varieties do you want to try this year? What plants did not perform well for you and why? Do you need to rotate crops to prevent disease and nutrient depletion? What is your overall garden layout going to look like? Do you need to improve your soil health before planting? Have you tested your soil pH and nutrient levels? What amendments, whether it be compost, fertilizer, mulch, or what have you, should you add to your soil? Do you need to start seeds indoors? If so, when? What are your area's last frost dates, and how does that affect your planting schedule? What companion planting strategies can you use for a healthier garden? Should you build or expand on your raised beds this year? Do you need to create a better watering system for your garden? What changes should you make to improve drainage in your garden beds? Do you need to add more pollinator-friendly plants? What natural pest control methods should you prepare for this year? Do you need to improve or repair garden paths or walkways? What garden structures, such as trellises, cages, and stakes, do you need to set up? Do you need new pruners, watering cans, etc.? Do you need to remove, rust, or sharpen any of your tools? Is your greenhouse clean and organized? Do you have a garden journal to jot your seed starting and planting dates in? Are your seed starting trays ready? Do you know where your heat mats are in the event that you need them? Will you be labeling your crops? If so, do you have labels? Do you have the tools related to accomplishing any of these tasks? Do you have gardening gloves? Are there any fertilizers, seeds, pots, or soil that you need to stock up on? Go ahead, take some time, finish jotting down whatever is coming to mind. Again, don't worry about being perfect. Don't worry about writing complete sentences. Just get whatever comes to mind off your chest. Put it to paper. All right, next, I'd like you to think about seed starting and plant selection. Which vegetables should you start from seed versus buying as transplants? What flowers and herbs should you grow alongside of your vegetables? Should you grow more perennials to reduce annual planting efforts? What are the best heat-tolerant varieties for your region? Do you want to plant any fruit trees or berry bushes this year? What are the best disease-resistant plant varieties for your area? Should I experiment with heirloom varieties? Should you experiment with heirloom varieties? What fast-growing crops can you plant for an early harvest? Do you need to grow more storage crops for winter use? How can you extend your growing season with succession planning? Which plants should you grow to attract beneficial insects? Should you plant any native plants to support the local wildlife? What edible flowers could you include in your garden this year? Should you try growing microgreens or sprouts indoors? What climbing plants could you add to maximize space? How many plants do you need to grow to satisfy your family's needs? Should you plant more drought-resistant plants to conserve water? What new herbs should you grow for culinary and/or medicinal use? Are there any invasive plants that you need to remove before planting? Should you dedicate a space for a cut flower garden this year? All right, and now let's focus our attention on garden maintenance and care. How often do you need to fertilize your plants this season? Should you add the fertilizing schedule to your phone or calendar? What organic fertilizers should you use? How can you improve your composting system? Should you add more mulch to suppress weeds and retain moisture? How can you make watering more efficient in your garden? What weeds were most troublesome last year, and how can you prevent them? How often should you prune your plants? Should you add your pruning schedule to your calendar or phone? Do you need to add support structures for certain plants? How can you encourage better soil microbial activity? What are the best ways to conserve water in your garden? How can you improve air circulation in order to reduce plant disease? Should you use row covers or shade cloth to protect your plants? What garden tools need to be cleaned, sharpened, or replaced? What natural pest repellents can you make at home? How can you attract more bees, butterflies, and hummingbirds? Should you set up a rainwater collection system? How can you deter deer, rabbits, or other wildlife from your garden? Do you need to add protective barriers against digging animals? Should you install drip irrigation or soaker hoses this year? What is your plan for handling extreme weather conditions? Again, feel free to pause this video at any time. Now let us focus on harvesting and preservation. How will you keep track of your harvest amounts this year? What early season crops can you harvest first? Do you need to plan for staggered harvesting? How will you store your harvest for long-term storage? What new preservation techniques should you try this year? Do you have enough supplies for freezing, canning, or dehydrating? How can you use more of your garden produce to reduce waste? Should you start a seed saving system for next year? What herbs can you dry freeze for later use? How can you share your surplus with your community? What recipes can you plan ahead to use your fresh produce? How can you make your garden more self-sustaining over time? Should you grow plants specifically for homemade teas? What edible weeds could you incorporate into your diet? Should you keep a garden journal to track your successes and your failures? How can you use succession planning to keep your garden productive? What vegetables can you overwinter for an early spring harvest? Do you need to build better storage for your root vegetables? Should you plant more medicinal herbs this year? And what plants should you grow specifically for seed saving? Now next we'll move on to my final section here. Lastly, I want you to focus on sustainability and experimentation. Pause the video if you need to, and then resume when you're ready. How can you reduce plastic waste in your gardening practices? Should you try making your own organic fertilizers and compost tea? How can you make your garden more resilient to climate change? What new gardening techniques should you experiment with this year? Would you like to try a no-dig gardening method? How can you integrate more permaculture principles into your garden? Should you create a food forest or edible landscape? What plants can you grow to improve biodiversity? How can you incorporate more vertical gardening techniques? Should you experiment with hydroponics or aquaponics? How can you use cover crops to improve soil health? What ways can you incorporate recycled materials into your garden? Should you add a greenhouse or a cold frame for year-round growing? How can you better involve your family in your gardening activities? What can you do to make your garden more aesthetically pleasing? Should you document your gardening journey through photos or videos? How can you make your garden a more relaxable and enjoying space? What community gardening initiatives can you participate in? How can you teach others about sustainable gardening? And finally, what legacy do you want your garden to leave behind? I hope that was helpful for you guys. I could certainly expand and refine some of those categories if you like. But mostly this process is just to get the juices flowing in your head. Get you jotting down some ideas that you probably already had and you don't want to forget. If you would like for me to do a more refined brain dump session with you, let me know down in the comments. This is a process that you can use across all areas of your life, not just gardening. If you need help coming up with the questions that you would ask yourself in any given category, I would be happy to tell you resources for finding that kind of information. The information I used here for the gardening, I came up with on my own, but there are resources out there that will help you come up with prompts for your brain dump sessions. As I stated earlier, this session could have been half an hour, could have been 5 minutes. It's all tailored to your specific needs. If you have any questions, feel free to leave those down below. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and you got something out of it. I know I did. I obviously didn't do my brain dump while I was reading the prompts to you, but I did edit the video and I did my brain dump whilst listening to my replay. And so I will show you here at the end what my brain dump looked like after completing this brain dump session with you all. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, share, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you all in another video on another day. Until then, happy growing, my friends.